The crisp autumn air nipped at my face as I hurried across the Richmond campus, clutching my lecture notes to my chest. Another day, another class full of bright-eyed students, eager to dissect the nuances of 19th century literature. At 55, I should have felt accomplished, settled. Instead, I felt hollow. "Professor Ross," a student called out, waving enthusiastically. I mustered a smile and a nod, my mind already drifting to the empty house waiting for me after work. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, but the silence still echoed through every room. As I entered the lecture hall, the familiar scent of old books and fresh coffee enveloped me. For the next hour, I lost myself in Austen and Bronte, my voice rising and falling with the passion of words penned centuries ago. It was in these moments, surrounded by literature and eager minds, that I felt most alive. But as the students filed out, chattering about weekend plans and upcoming papers, that familiar ache settled in my chest. I gathered my things slowly, dreading the long evening ahead. On a whim, I decided to take a detour on my way home. The local animal shelter had been advertising for volunteers, and God knows I had the time to spare. As I pulled into the parking lot, a gentle rain began to fall, matching my melancholy mood. The shelter was a cacophony of barks and meows, punctuated by the occasional squawk of a rescued bird. A harried-looking volunteer greeted me, relief evident in her eyes at the sight of potential help. "First time?" she asked, already reaching for a volunteer form. I nodded, filling out the paperwork with quick, precise strokes. As I handed it back, movement in the corner of my eye caught my attention. A young woman was crouched in front of a cage, speaking softly to its occupant. Her blonde hair fell in gentle waves around her face, and even from this distance, I could see the warmth in her green eyes. Something stirred within me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. I quickly looked away, chastising myself for the inappropriate thoughts. "Right this way, Professor Ross," the volunteer said, leading me towards the cat section. "We've got a new arrival that could use some TLC." As we approached the cages, I saw the blonde woman again. She looked up, our eyes meeting for a brief, electric moment. I felt my cheeks flush, and quickly averted my gaze. "Catherine," the volunteer called out, "could you show Professor Ross how to handle Whiskers? He's still a bit skittish." The blonde Catherine smiled and nodded, rising gracefully to her feet. As she approached, I caught a whiff of her perfume, something light and floral that made my head spin. "Of course," she said, her voice low and melodious. "It's nice to meet you, Professor Ross. I'm Catherine Morgan." She extended her hand, and as I took it, I felt a jolt of something. Our eyes met again, and for a moment the world seemed to fall away. "Diana," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please call me Diana." Catherine's smile widened, and I found myself mirroring it. As she began to explain the proper way to approach the nervous cat, I found myself hanging on her every word, captivated by the gentle lilt of her voice and the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed. We worked side by side for the next hour, tending to the various cats in need of care. Our hands brushed occasionally as we reached for supplies, each touch sending a shiver down my spine. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a fleeting attraction, but deep down, I knew better. As the shelter began to close for the evening, Catherine and I found ourselves lingering, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Will you be back next week?" she asked, a hint of hope in her voice. I nodded, surprised by how eager I was at the prospect. "Same time, same place?" Catherine's smile was radiant. "I'll be here." As I drove home that evening, the rain had stopped, and a warm glow seemed to suffuse the world around me. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of excitement for what the future might hold. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about myself, about love, and about the unexpected paths life can lead us down. The weeks flew by in a blur of lectures, grading, and stolen moments at the animal shelter. Each Saturday, I found myself looking forward to those few precious hours with Catherine more than anything else in my life. We fell into an easy rhythm, chatting about books, music, and our shared love of animals as we went about our tasks. I told myself it was just friendship, a connection born of shared interests and compatible personalities. But deep down, I knew it was more. The way my heart raced when she smiled, the electricity that coursed through me at the slightest touch. it was becoming harder and harder to deny. One Friday evening, after a particularly grueling faculty meeting, I decided I needed a drink. Without really thinking about it, I found myself pulling into the parking lot of a bar I'd never visited before. The neon sign flickered weakly in the gathering darkness. The Hideaway. As I pushed open the heavy wooden door, the smoky atmosphere and low hum of conversation enveloped me. It wasn't until I was halfway to the bar that I realized something was different. The clientele was predominantly female, and there was an undercurrent of energy I couldn't quite place. I froze, suddenly aware that I had stumbled into a lesbian bar. My first instinct was to turn and flee, but a familiar voice stopped me in my tracks. "What can I get for you?" I looked up, my eyes widening in shock as they met Catherine's green gaze. She was behind the bar, a towel slung over her shoulder, looking just as surprised as I felt. "Catherine?" I managed to stammer out. I didn't know you worked here." For a moment, panic flashed across her face. Then, smoothing her features into a neutral expression, she replied, "Just started." "What brings you to the Hideaway, Professor Ross?" The use of my title stung, a reminder of the boundaries between us. I slid onto a bar stool, my mind reeling. "I suppose I was looking for a quiet place to unwind," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And please, it's Diana. We're not in class." Catherine nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "What'll it be then, Diana?" "Gin and tonic?" I replied, my mouth suddenly dry. As she turned to make my drink, I couldn't help but admire the graceful way she moved, the confident set of her shoulders. When she returned with my drink, our fingers brushed as I took the glass. The familiar spark was there, more intense than ever. "So," I said, taking a sip to steady my nerves, "how long have you been coming here?" Catherine's eyes darted around the bar before settling back on me. "A while," she admitted softly. "It's not exactly something I advertise." I nodded, understanding all too well. "Your secret's safe with me," I assured her. As the night wore on, we fell into conversation between her serving other customers. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a growing sense of intimacy. Here, away from the shelter and the university, we were just two women sharing confidences. "I never meant to hide it from you," Catherine said as last call approached. "It's just complicated." I reached out, covering her hand with mine. "I understand, more than you know." Our eyes met, and in that moment, I saw a reflection of my own longing, my own fears. The air between us crackled with unspoken possibility. Just then, a boisterous group entered the bar, breaking the spell. Catherine reluctantly pulled her hand away, turning to deal with the new customers. As I gathered my things to leave, she caught my eye one last time. "Same time at the shelter tomorrow?" I nodded, a warmth spreading through my chest. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The cool night air was a shock to my system as I left the bar. My mind was reeling, trying to process everything that had happened. Catherine was, like me. The realization sent a thrill of excitement and terror through me. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the image of her behind the bar, confident and beautiful. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine a future filled with possibility, with love. But reality crashed in as I pulled into my driveway. I was her professor, older by more than 2 decades. Any relationship between us would be seen as an abuse of power, a scandal waiting to happen. I spent the night tossing and turning, torn between the growing feelings in my heart and the rational voice in my head warning me of the consequences. When I arrived at the shelter the next day, Catherine was already there, a tentative smile on her face. As our eyes met, I knew that everything had changed. The careful dance we'd been doing for weeks was over. Now, we faced a new challenge, navigating the complex emotions between us while respecting the boundaries that society and our own positions demanded. As we worked side by side, tending to the animals, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. One thing was certain, my life would never be the same. The crisp autumn air had given way to winter's chill, and with it came a flurry of activity on campus. As I hurried across the quad, my breath visible in the frigid air, I couldn't shake the feeling of anticipation that had been building for weeks. Today was the deadline for graduate program applications, and I knew that somewhere in the stack of papers waiting on my desk would be Catherine's submission. The thought both thrilled and terrified me. Since that night at the hideaway, we'd settled into a delicate balance. Our Saturday mornings at the shelter remained a constant, filled with easy conversation and lingering glances. But there was an undercurrent of tension now, a shared secret that bound us together even as it threatened to tear us apart. I unlocked my office door, shrugging off my heavy coat and scarf. The familiar scent of old books and coffee enveloped me as I sat down at my desk, eyeing the stack of applications with a mixture of dread and excitement. It didn't take long to find hers. Catherine Morgan, the name neatly printed at the top of the form, seemed to jump out at me. With trembling hands, I began to read. Her personal statement was beautifully written, passionate and insightful. As I pored over her academic achievements and glowing recommendations, a sense of pride welled up in me. She was brilliant, deserving of a place in our program regardless of our connection. But therein lay the problem. How could I possibly be objective about this? Every word I read was colored by my growing feelings for her, by the memory of her smile, the sound of her laugh. A knock at my door startled me out of my reverie. "Come in," I called, hastily shuffling the papers on my desk. To my surprise, it was Catherine who entered, a hesitant smile on her face. "Professor Ross," she said, her voice soft. "I hope I'm not interrupting." I shook my head, gesturing for her to take a seat. "Not at all. What can I do for you, Ms. Morgan?" The formality felt strange on my tongue, but necessary given our surroundings. Catherine sat down, her green eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my heart race. "I wanted to talk to you about my application," she began. "I know it's unconventional, but I felt I should explain in person why this program means so much to me." As she spoke, her passion for literature, for learning, shone through. I found myself captivated, not just by her words, but by the way her eyes lit up, the graceful movements of her hands as she explained her research interests. "You have a unique perspective," I said when she finished, my voice husky with emotion. "Your application is very strong, Catherine." She smiled, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Thank you, Diana. That means a lot coming from you." The use of my first name sent a shiver down my spine. We were treading dangerous ground, the lines between professor and student, between friends and something more, blurring with each passing moment. Just then, a group of students passed by my open door, their laughter echoing in the hallway. It was a stark reminder of where we were, of the precarious position we found ourselves in. Catherine seemed to sense the shift in mood. She stood, smoothing down her skirt. "I should go. Thank you for your time, Professor." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As she turned to leave, our eyes met once more. The longing I saw reflected there matched my own, and it took every ounce of willpower I possessed not to reach out to her. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving me alone with my tumultuous thoughts. I knew I should recuse myself from the application process, cite a conflict of interest. But the thought of not being involved in this crucial decision in Catherine's life was unbearable. The next few weeks were a blur of committee meetings and heated debates. I fought for Catherine's application as hard as I dared without raising suspicion, emphasizing her academic merits and unique perspective. It was after one such meeting, as I was hurrying down an empty corridor, that I quite literally ran into Catherine. Papers went flying, and as we both knelt to gather them, our hands brushed. The electric shock of contact froze us both in place. I looked up, finding her face inches from mine. Time seemed to stand still as we knelt there, the air between us thick with unspoken words and suppressed desire. "Catherine," I breathed, barely a whisper. She leaned in, her lips brushing against mine in the softest of kisses. For a moment, the world fell away. There was only her warmth, her scent, the impossible softness of her lips. Then reality came crashing back. I pulled away abruptly, my heart pounding. "We can't," I said, my voice breaking. "You know we can't." Pain flashed across Catherine's face, quickly replaced by determination. "Why not?" she challenged. "I'm not your student yet. We're both consenting adults. Why should we deny ourselves happiness?" Her words echoed my own secret thoughts, the arguments I'd been having with myself for weeks. But the risks, the potential consequences. "It's not that simple," I said, rising to my feet. "Your application, my position here, there's so much at stake." Catherine stood as well, her green eyes blazing. Some things are worth the risk, Diana. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the corridor, my lips still tingling from our kiss. As I made my way back to my office, my mind was in turmoil. The taste of her lips, the feel of her so close, it was intoxicating. But the rational part of my brain screamed warnings about professional ethics, about the scandal that could erupt if we were discovered. I sank into my chair, burying my face in my hands. How had I let things get this far? And more importantly, what was I going to do next? The answer, I knew, would shape not just my future, but Catherine's as well. As the winter sun set outside my window, casting long shadows across my desk, I realized that I was standing at a crossroads. Whatever decision I made would change everything. With a heavy sigh, I reached for the phone. It was time to make a choice. Winter had Richmond firmly in its icy grip. Snow blanketed the campus, muffling the usual bustle of university life. I stood at my office window, watching fat flakes swirl in the wind, my mind as turbulent as the storm outside. It had been weeks since that stolen kiss in the hallway, weeks of agonizing silence between Catherine and me. I'd thrown myself into work, burying my conflicted emotions under a mountain of papers to grade and lectures to prepare. But in quiet moments like this, the memory of her lips on mine haunted me. A soft knock at my door startled me from my reverie. "Come in," I called, turning from the window. My heart skipped a beat as Catherine stepped inside, cheeks flushed from the cold, snowflakes melting in her golden hair. She looked breathtaking, and I had to remind myself to breathe. "Professor Ross," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I hope I'm not interrupting?" "Not at all," I replied, gesturing for her to sit. "What can I do for you, Ms. Morgan?" She perched on the edge of the chair, her green eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. "I wanted to ask about the status of my application," she said. "The waiting is difficult." I nodded, understanding all too well. "The committee is still deliberating," I told her. "Your application is strong, but there's fierce competition this year." Catherine bit her lip, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her face. "And our situation? Has that affected things?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I sighed, sinking into my chair. "I've recused myself from voting on your application," I admitted. "It was the only ethical choice." She nodded, a mix of emotions playing across her features. "I understand," she said softly. "Thank you for your honesty." We sat in silence for a moment, the unspoken tension between us almost palpable. Finally, Catherine spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you regret it? That kiss?" My breath caught in my throat. "Catherine," I began, but she cut me off. "Because I don't," she said fiercely. "I know it's complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why we shouldn't. But I can't stop thinking about you, Diana." The use of my first name sent a shiver down my spine. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, a commotion in the hallway interrupted us. We both rushed to the door, opening it to find a crowd gathered around the bulletin board. Posted there was a notice. "Due to severe weather conditions, all classes and activities are canceled for the remainder of the day. Students are advised to return to their residences immediately." As if on cue, the lights flickered ominously. Catherine and I exchanged a glance, the earlier tension momentarily forgotten in the face of this new development. "I should get going," Catherine said, but there was a hesitation in her voice. I nodded, trying to ignore the part of me that wanted to ask her to stay. "Be careful out there," I said instead. As she turned to leave, a thought struck me. "Wait," I called after her. "The animal shelter. Someone needs to check on the animals." Catherine's eyes widened in realization. "You're right. I'll head there now." "I'll come with you," I said, grabbing my coat. "It's not safe to be out alone in this weather." The drive to the shelter was treacherous, the roads slick with ice and visibility poor. By the time we arrived, the storm had intensified into a full-blown blizzard. Inside, the animals were restless, sensing the disturbance in the air. We worked quickly, checking food and water, securing cages, and offering reassuring words to the more anxious creatures. As I was checking on a particularly nervous cat, I felt Catherine's presence behind me. I turned to find her standing close, snowflakes melting in her hair, her cheeks flushed from the cold and exertion. "Diana," she said softly, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from my face. The touch sent electricity coursing through me. Before I could respond, a loud crash of thunder shook the building, causing the lights to flicker and then go out completely. In the sudden darkness, I felt Catherine's hand find mine, our fingers intertwining instinctively. "It's okay," I murmured, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "There should be emergency lights and a generator." Sure enough, a moment later, dim emergency lighting flickered on. But as we made our way to the office to check on the generator, it became clear that we had a problem. "It's not starting," Catherine said, frustration evident in her voice as she fiddled with the controls. "And the phone lines are dead." I peered out the window, seeing nothing but a wall of white. "We're trapped," I realized aloud, "at least until the storm passes." Catherine's eyes met mine in the dim light, a mix of fear and something else, excitement, perhaps, visible in their depths. "What do we do now?" she asked. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "We make the best of it," I said. "There are emergency supplies here. We'll be okay." As we set about gathering blankets and non-perishable food, I couldn't shake the awareness of Catherine's presence, of the way the dim light caught the gold in her hair, the curve of her cheek. We settled in the small break room, huddled together for warmth, the howling wind outside a constant reminder of our isolation. Catherine's body was pressed against mine, and I could feel the rapid beat of her heart. "Diana," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "I'm scared." I turned to face her, our noses almost touching. "It's going to be all right," I assured her, my hand coming up to cup her cheek almost of its own accord. For a moment, we simply stared at each other, the air between us charged with unspoken emotions. Then, slowly, inevitably, our lips met. This kiss was different from our first, deeper, more urgent. All the pent-up longing, all the stolen glances and suppressed desires of the past months poured out in a rush of passion. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, I knew that everything had changed. There was no going back now, no pretending this was anything less than what it was. As the storm raged outside, Catherine and I clung to each other in the darkness, finding warmth and comfort in each other's arms. Whatever consequences awaited us in the light of day, for now, we had this moment, this connection. And as I drifted off to sleep, Catherine's steady breathing a soothing rhythm beside me, I couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, some things were worth the risk after all. The aftermath of the blizzard brought more than just melting snow and slush-covered streets to Richmond. As life on campus slowly returned to normal, I found myself navigating treacherous waters of a different kind. Whispers followed me through the hallways, sidelong glances from colleagues that spoke volumes. It seemed our night at the animal shelter hadn't gone unnoticed after all. "Diana!" a stern voice called out as I was leaving my morning lecture. I turned to see Margaret, the head of our department, her lips pressed into a thin line. "A word in my office, please." My heart sank as I followed her, knowing what was coming. The door closed behind us with a soft click that felt like a prison gate slamming shut. Margaret settled behind her desk, fixing me with a steely gaze. "I've been hearing some concerning rumors, Diana, about you and a certain graduate school applicant." I took a deep breath, willing my voice to remain steady. "Margaret, I can explain." She held up a hand, cutting me off. "I don't want explanations. I want this to stop immediately. Do you have any idea how this looks? The scandal it could cause?" Her words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting them. "Nothing inappropriate has happened," I lied, the taste of Catherine's lips still a phantom presence on my own. Margaret's eyebrow arched skeptically. "See that it stays that way. We've worked too hard to build this department's reputation to have it tarnished by this." I left her office feeling shaken, my carefully constructed world threatening to crumble around me. As I turned the corner, lost in thought, I nearly collided with Catherine. "Diana," she breathed, her green eyes wide with concern. "Are you okay? You look pale." I glanced around nervously, acutely aware of the curious gazes of passing students. "Not here," I murmured, guiding her to an empty classroom. Once inside, Catherine's hands found mine, her touch sending familiar sparks through my body. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. I sighed, leaning against a desk for support. People are talking, Catherine, about us. The department head just warned me to end, whatever this is. A flash of hurt crossed Catherine's face, quickly replaced by determination. And what did you tell her? I said nothing inappropriate had happened, I admitted, unable to meet her eyes. Catherine's grip on my hands tightened. Is that what you really think, that this is inappropriate? I looked up then, seeing the challenge in her gaze. You know it's not that simple, I said. There are rules, expectations. Damn the rules, Catherine interrupted, her voice low and fierce. I'm tired of hiding, Diana. I'm tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel for you. Before I could respond, she closed the distance between us, capturing my lips in a searing kiss. For a moment, I forgot everything. The whispers, Margaret's warnings, the potential consequences. There was only Catherine, the softness of her lips, the warmth of her body pressed against mine. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, I rested my forehead against hers. We can't keep doing this, I whispered, even as every fiber of my being screamed in protest. Catherine pulled back slightly, her eyes searching mine. Why not? She challenged. I'm not your student, not yet. We're both consenting adults. Why should we deny ourselves happiness because of what others might think? Her words echoed my own secret thoughts, the arguments I'd been having with myself for weeks. But the risks, the potential consequences. It's not just about us, I said softly. Your future, my career, there's so much at stake. Catherine's jaw set in a determined line. Some things are worth fighting for, Diana. I think we are. With that, she turned and walked out of the classroom, leaving me alone with my tumultuous thoughts. The next few days passed in a blur of classes and committee meetings. I threw myself into work, trying to ignore the ache in my chest whenever I caught a glimpse of golden hair in the crowded hallways. It was late one evening, as I was packing up to leave my office, that I found the first note. A small, folded piece of paper tucked into the pile of essays I was grading. With trembling hands, I opened it, immediately recognizing Catherine's elegant handwriting. In vain I have struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the quote from Pride and Prejudice. It was both a declaration and a challenge, wrapped in the words of Austen that we both loved so dearly. More notes followed over the next week, each one hidden in a different place, slipped into my faculty mailbox, tucked under the windshield wiper of my car, even folded into the pages of a book I'd left on my desk. Each one contained a different literary quote about love and longing, each one chipping away at my resolve. I knew I should put a stop to it, knew the danger we were courting. But I couldn't bring myself to confront Catherine, couldn't bear the thought of ending this tenuous connection between us. It all came to a head one rainy afternoon. I was in my office, grading papers, when a commotion in the hallway drew my attention. Raised voices, the sound of something shattering. I rushed out to find Catherine facing off against a tall, angry-looking young man. Shards of a broken vase littered the floor between them. You can't just ignore me, Cat, the man was saying, his voice slurred. We were good together. I can make you happy, not like... That's enough, James. Catherine cut him off, her voice tight with anger. We're done. I've told you that. Now please, just leave. I stepped forward, my protective instincts kicking in. Is there a problem here? I asked, my voice calm but firm. James turned to me, his bloodshot eyes narrowing. This doesn't concern you, lady, he spat. I think it does, I replied coolly. This is a place of learning, not a bar. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. For a tense moment I thought he might argue. But then he deflated, shooting Catherine one last pleading look before stumbling away. As soon as he was gone, Catherine sagged against the wall, tears welling in her eyes. Without thinking, I wrapped an arm around her, guiding her into my office and closing the door. Are you all right? I asked softly, handing her a tissue. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry, she sniffled. That was my ex, He doesn't want to accept that it's over. I felt a surge of protectiveness, mixed with a hint of jealousy I didn't want to examine too closely. Has he bothered you before? Catherine shook her head. Not like this. I think he suspects there's someone else. Our eyes met, and in that moment, all the unspoken feelings between us rose to the surface. Before I could think better of it, I leaned in, capturing her lips in a gentle kiss. This time there was no interruption, no voice of reason telling us to stop. As the kiss deepened, I felt something inside me shift, a decision being made. Whatever consequences we might face, whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew in that moment that I was all in. Catherine was worth the risk, worth fighting for. As we broke apart, both breathless, I saw my own determination reflected in Catherine's eyes. We had crossed a line, and there was no going back now. The storm was coming, but we would face it together. The arrival of spring brought with it a renewed sense of hope and possibility. As the campus came alive with blooming flowers and bustling students, I found myself standing at a crossroads, both personally and professionally. The weight of my decision pressed heavily on my mind as I made my way to the dean's office. Each step felt like a countdown, ticking away the seconds until I would irrevocably alter the course of my life. "Come in, Diana," Dean Thompson called as I knocked on his door, his kindly face creased with concern as I settled into the chair across from him. "What can I do for you today?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I've been considering early retirement," I said, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess myself. The dean's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Retirement? But Diana, you're at the peak of your career. Your work is respected worldwide. Are you sure about this?" For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I really willing to give up everything I'd worked for? But then I thought of Catherine, of the future we could have together if I were no longer bound by the constraints of academia. "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady. "I've given it a lot of thought. It's time for me to explore other opportunities." Dean Thompson leaned back in his chair, studying me intently. "Is this decision related to the rumors I've been hearing?" I felt a flush creep up my neck but met his gaze squarely. "My personal life is my own, Dean, but yes, I won't deny that it's a factor in my decision." He nodded slowly. "I see. Well, I can't say I'm not disappointed to lose you, Diana, but I respect your decision. Let's discuss the details of your transition." As I left his office an hour later, a mix of emotions swirled within me. Sadness at leaving behind the career I'd built, excitement for the future ahead, and a touch of fear at the unknown. I was so lost in thought that I almost missed Catherine waiting for me outside the English department. Her face lit up as she saw me, but quickly turned to concern as she took in my expression. "Diana? What's wrong?" she asked, her voice low. I glanced around, acutely aware of the curious looks from passing students and faculty. "Not here," I murmured. "Meet me at my place in an hour?" She nodded, understanding in her eyes. As she walked away, I couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed in just a few short months. Back at my apartment, I paced nervously, rehearsing what I would say to Catherine. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart leapt into my throat. Catherine looked radiant as she stepped inside, her golden hair catching the late afternoon sunlight. "Diana," she breathed, reaching for me. I allowed myself a moment to sink into her embrace before pulling back. "We need to talk," I said, leading her to the couch. As we sat, I took her hands in mine, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. "I've made a decision," I began. "I'm retiring from the university." Catherine's eyes widened in shock. "Retiring? But Diana, your career, are you sure about this?" I nodded, squeezing her hands gently. "I'm sure. I want to be with you, Catherine, openly, honestly, without fear of scandal or repercussions." Tears welled in her eyes as the implications of my words sank in. "But what about your work, your research?" "I can continue my research independently," I said. "And there are other universities, ones without the same conflict of interest. But right now, what matters most to me is us." Catherine's expression softened, a mix of love and concern in her eyes. "I don't want you to give up your dreams for me," she whispered. I cupped her face gently, brushing away a stray tear with my thumb. "You are my dream now," I said softly. "Everything else is just details." She leaned in then, capturing my lips in a kiss that spoke volumes. As we broke apart, both breathless, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. This was where I belonged. "I have news too," Catherine said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "I've been accepted to several graduate programs." My heart swelled with pride, even as a flicker of uncertainty passed through me. That's wonderful, Catherine. You deserve it. She bit her lip, hesitating. The thing is, one of the offers is from a university on the West Coast. It's an amazing opportunity, but it would mean leaving Richmond. I finished for her. Catherine nodded, her eyes searching mine. I don't know what to do. I want to be with you, but I also don't want to pass up this chance. I took a deep breath, pushing down the selfish part of me that wanted to beg her to stay. You should go, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. This is your future, Catherine. I won't hold you back. But what about us? She asked, her voice small. I smiled, bringing her hand to my lips. We'll figure it out. I'm not tied to Richmond anymore. Maybe I could come with you? Catherine's eyes lit up at the suggestion. You'd do that? Leave everything behind? For you? In a heartbeat, I replied, meaning every word. As the reality of our decision sank in, we fell into a comfortable silence, wrapped in each other's arms. The future stretched out before us, full of uncertainty but also brimming with possibility. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Catherine and I found ourselves tangled together in my bed. The weight of our decisions, the enormity of the changes ahead, seemed to heighten every sensation. Our lovemaking was slow, tender, each touch a promise, each kiss a declaration. As we moved together, I marveled at the softness of her skin, the curve of her hip beneath my palm, the way her breath hitched as I trailed kisses down her neck. In the aftermath, as we lay entwined, sweat cooling on our skin, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. I love you, I whispered into the quiet of the room, the words feeling both monumental and utterly natural. Catherine's arms tightened around me, her lips brushing my temple. I love you too, she murmured. Always. As sleep began to claim us, I found myself looking forward to the future for the first time in years. With Catherine by my side, I was ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead. The road might not be easy, but it would be ours. And that, I realized, was all that really mattered. The heat of summer had settled over Richmond like a thick blanket, but inside the air-conditioned halls of the university, a different kind of heat was brewing. As I made my way to what would be one of my final faculty meetings, the whispers that had been circulating for months seemed to crescendo into a deafening roar. I held my head high, ignoring the not-so-subtle glances and hushed conversations that ceased abruptly as I passed. Let them talk, I thought. In a few short weeks, none of this would matter. The meeting room was already crowded when I arrived, colleagues clustered in small groups, their conversations a low hum of tension. As I took my seat, I caught sight of Margaret, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Dean Thompson called the meeting to order, his usual jovial demeanor noticeably strained. Before we begin, he said, I'd like to address the situation that has been causing some distraction lately. My heart began to race, but I kept my expression neutral. This was it then, the moment of truth. As you all know, the dean continued, Professor Ross has decided to take early retirement. While we're saddened to lose such a valued member of our faculty, we respect her decision and wish her the best in her future endeavors. A murmur rippled through the room. I could feel the weight of every gaze upon me, some sympathetic, others judgmental. However, Dean Thompson's voice cut through the whispers, it has come to our attention that there may have been improprieties involving a graduate school applicant. The room fell silent. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. These allegations are serious, the dean said, his voice grave. If true, they could have severe repercussions for both the individuals involved and the university as a whole. I stood then, my chair scraping loudly in the hushed room. If I may, Dean Thompson, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands, I'd like to address these allegations directly. The dean nodded, gesturing for me to continue. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of colleagues I'd worked alongside for years. Yes, I have formed a relationship with Catherine Morgan, I said, my voice clear and unwavering. And yes, she was an applicant to our graduate program. But I want to make it absolutely clear that nothing inappropriate occurred while she was under consideration for admission. A ripple of murmurs swept through the room. I pressed on, determined to have my say. I recused myself from all decisions regarding her application. Our relationship began after that process was complete. I've chosen to retire not out of guilt or shame, but because I believe in living authentically and pursuing happiness. I paused, letting my words sink in. I understand that some of you may disapprove and you have every right to your opinions, but I stand by my choices and my integrity as an educator and a human being. As I finished speaking, the room erupted into a cacophony of voices. Some colleagues defended me, others expressed their disappointment. Through it all, I remained standing, my head held high. Suddenly, the door burst open, and Catherine strode in, her green eyes blazing with determination. A hush fell over the room as all eyes turned to her. "I'm sorry for interrupting," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "But I couldn't stand by and let Diana face this alone." She moved to stand beside me, her hand finding mine in a gesture of solidarity. The simple touch gave me strength, and I squeezed her fingers gratefully. "I want to make it clear," Catherine continued, addressing the stunned faculty, "that Diana has acted with nothing but integrity throughout this entire process. Our relationship began after I had been accepted to multiple programs, including ones at other universities. We chose to pursue our feelings as consenting adults, fully aware of the potential consequences." Her words hung in the air, challenging anyone to dispute them. I marveled at her courage, her unwavering support in the face of such scrutiny. Dean Thompson cleared his throat, breaking the tense silence. "Ms. Morgan, while I appreciate your passion, this is a closed faculty meeting. I'm afraid I must ask you to leave." Catherine nodded, but before turning to go, she faced me once more. In front of the entire faculty, she leaned in and kissed me softly on the cheek. "I'll be waiting outside," she murmured. As she left, the room once again erupted into chaos. Voices rose in argument, accusations flew back and forth. Through it all, I remained calm, answering questions as honestly as I could, without compromising Catherine's privacy or our dignity. Hours later, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples, I finally emerged from the building. Catherine was there, just as she promised, her face a mixture of concern and hope. "How did it go?" she asked softly as I approached. I sighed, feeling the weight of the day's events settle on my shoulders. "It was intense," I admitted, "but I think we got through to some of them. The dean has agreed to conduct a formal investigation, but given that I'm retiring and you've already been accepted elsewhere, it's largely a formality." Catherine nodded, relief evident in her eyes. "So it's over?" I pulled her close, not caring who might see. "Almost," I said. "There will be talk, of course, rumors, but we've faced the worst of it head on." As we walked hand in hand across the campus, the weight of secrecy finally lifted from my shoulders. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, out in the open. That evening, as Catherine and I sat on my small balcony, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead might be uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the future. "What are you thinking?" Catherine asked, her head resting on my shoulder. I smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'm thinking about new beginnings," I said softly, "about the life we're going to build together." She lifted her head, her green eyes shining in the dim light. "I love you, Diana," she whispered. "No matter what happens, no matter where we end up, that will never change." As our lips met in a tender kiss, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right choice. The road ahead might be challenging, but with Catherine by my side, I was ready to face whatever came our way. The stars twinkled above us, silent witnesses to the start of our new chapter. As we held each other close, I silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought us together. The future was ours to write, and I couldn't wait to see where our story would take us next. The crisp, autumn air nipped at my cheeks as I stood in front of the small brick building, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves. A year had passed since that tumultuous summer, a year of change, growth, and unexpected twists. "Ready?" Catherine asked, squeezing my hand gently. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." Together, we pushed open the door to our new bookstore and cafe, Hidden Melodies. The bell chimed softly, welcoming us into the space we'd poured our hearts and savings into over the past few months. The scent of fresh paint mingled with the aroma of newly delivered books and freshly ground coffee beans. Shelves lined the walls, waiting to be filled with carefully curated titles. In the corner, a small stage stood ready for poetry readings and author events. As we moved through the space, making final preparations for our grand opening, I couldn't help but marvel at the journey that had brought us here. After the dust settled from the university scandal, Catherine and I had indeed moved to the West Coast for her graduate studies. But life, as it often does, had other plans for us. "Remember the day we got the call about your aunt's estate?" Catherine mused, as if reading my thoughts. I chuckled, shaking my head. How could I forget? It changed everything. My Aunt Isabel, a reclusive writer I'd barely known, had left me her entire estate, including a substantial sum of money and a quaint Victorian house back in Richmond. At first, we'd been unsure what to do with the unexpected windfall. But then, during a late-night conversation fueled by too much wine and nostalgia for our old city, the idea had taken root. A bookstore and cafe, a place where literature and community could flourish. A fresh start, built on the foundation of our shared passions. "Do you regret giving up your program?" I asked Catherine, a question that still nagged at me sometimes. She turned to me, her green eyes sparkling with warmth. "Not for a second," she said firmly. This is where I'm meant to be, with you, building something beautiful together." I pulled her close, overwhelmed by the love and gratitude I felt for this remarkable woman. "I don't deserve you," I murmured into her hair. Catherine laughed, the sound echoing through the empty shop. "Nonsense. We deserve each other, and all the happiness we can grab with both hands." As we finished our preparations, a knock at the door startled us. I glanced at my watch, frowning. "We're not open for another hour." Catherine peeked through the window, then grinned. "I think you'll want to let them in." Curious, I opened the door to find a small group of familiar faces. Sarah, my former colleague and unexpected ally during the university ordeal, Dean Thompson, looking slightly uncomfortable but determined. And to my utter shock, Margaret, clutching a gift bag and wearing an expression that might almost be called sheepish. "Surprise!" Sarah exclaimed, ushering the group inside. "We couldn't miss your big day." I stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the gesture. Catherine's hand on my back steadied me, and I found my voice. "This is unexpected. Thank you all for coming." Dean Thompson stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Diana, Catherine, I wanted to apologize personally for how things were handled last year. Your courage in facing the situation head-on. Well, it's led to some positive changes in university policies." Margaret nodded, adding softly, "And it's opened some eyes to the need for more inclusivity and understanding." Tears pricked at my eyes as I absorbed their words. The pain and fear of those difficult days felt distant now, replaced by a sense of validation and hope. "Thank you," I managed, my voice thick with emotion. "Your support means more than you know." As Catherine led them on a tour of the shop, chatting animatedly about our plans for author events and community outreach, I took a moment to collect myself. Looking around at the space we'd created, at the unlikely group of people gathered to support us, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. The bell above the door chimed again, and I turned to see a young woman enter hesitantly. She couldn't have been more than 20, her eyes wide as she took in the shop. "Are you open?" she asked timidly. "I saw the sign." I smiled warmly, gesturing her inside. "We're having a soft opening for friends and family, but please, come in. What brings you to Hidden Melodies?" The girl blushed slightly. I'm a creative writing student at the university. I heard there was a new bookshop opening, run BBY well by a couple like me and my girlfriend. I wanted to see for myself." My heart swelled at her words. This, I realized, was why we'd done all of this. Not just for ourselves, but for every person who needed a safe space, a community, a place to belong. "You're absolutely welcome here," I said, guiding her towards the poetry section. "In fact, why don't you be our official first customer? Pick out any book you'd like, on the house." Her face lit up with joy, and as she browsed the shelves, I caught Catherine's eye across the room. She smiled, a look of pure love and contentment on her face that mirrored my own feelings. As the hour of our grand opening approached, more people began to filter in, curious neighbors, excited students, old friends, and new supporters. The shop hummed with conversation and laughter, the energy palpable. Catherine made her way back to my side, slipping her arm around my waist. "Quite the turnout," she murmured. "Ready to make it official?" I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment. Together we stepped up onto the small stage, the room falling quiet as all eyes turned to us. "Welcome, everyone, to Hidden Melodies," I began, my voice strong and clear. "This shop is a dream come true for Catherine and me, a place where stories can be shared, where community can flourish, and where love in all its forms is celebrated." Catherine squeezed my hand, adding, "We hope you'll find not just books here but acceptance, inspiration, and maybe even a bit of magic." As applause filled the room, I looked out at the faces before us, friends old and new, supporters and former adversaries, all coming together in the space we'd created. The journey that had brought us here had been far from easy, filled with unexpected twists and painful moments. But standing there with Catherine by my side and a future full of possibility stretching out before us, I knew that every step had been worth it. We had faced our fears, fought for our love, and in doing so, had created something beautiful not just for ourselves, but for others who needed it. As we cut the ribbon to officially open Hidden Melodies, I realized that this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning of a new chapter, a new adventure, a new way of living authentically and spreading love through the power of words. And as Catherine pulled me in for a kiss, the cheers of our supporters ringing in my ears, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. One page, one day, one shared story at a time.